Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. If you love history, power, and the untold stories of the greatest people who ever lived, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell icon, because today we're diving deep into one of the most powerful stories ever told. In a world where kings ruled with power and empires rose from the sands, there lived a man whose name echoed across continents, not for war, not for blood, but for unimaginable wealth. His journey began in the heart of Africa, where the blazing sun kissed the golden earth. A boy born with nothing, destined to hold everything. He would rise to build an empire so powerful that even time could not erase his name. This is not just a story of gold, it's a story of vision, faith, and destiny. The legend of the man who turned dust into gold. In the golden heart of ancient Africa, where the sun burned brighter than fire and the winds of the Sahara carried the songs of forgotten empires, destiny opened its eyes. Far from the royal cities and bustling markets, in a small mud brick village near the river Niger, a child was born. The villagers named him Musa, the saved one. His cry was soft, almost like a whisper lost in the desert air. Yet his mother felt something different in that voice. She looked at the newborn wrapped in a torn cloth and told him that he came to them with nothing but one day the world would remember his name in gold. Musa's childhood was not of luxury, but of struggle. The rains often failed, the wells ran dry, and families counted every grain of millet like treasure. But even in hardship, Musa's eyes sparkled with curiosity. He would spend hours staring at the endless horizon, watching the camel caravans fade into the distance, and asking his mother where they go. She told him that they go to places where the sand meets the sea, where men trade salt for gold and stories for wisdom. From that day, Musa dreamed of seeing those lands himself. When other boys ran barefoot through the dunes, Musa sat beside the old storyteller, Baba Jallo, who told tales of kings and prophets. Under the flickering torchlight, Jallo's voice would rise and fall like the wind. Empires fall not when gold ends, but when faith ends. Musa listened wide-eyed, his heart catching every word. At night, when the stars flooded the African sky, he lay on the sand, whispering verses from the Quran he had heard that day. The desert around him was silent, except for the call of the wind. It felt as if the whole world listened to the boy pray. As he grew older, Musa's hunger for knowledge became his only wealth. He followed travelers who passed through Mali, merchants from Ghana, scholars from Fez, even wandering poets from Cairo. He carried their bags, fetched them water, only to ask one thing in return: a story, a lesson, a secret of the world. One day, an old merchant gave him a small copper coin and told him that the coin has no life if it only sits in his hand, and that he should trade it, move it, and give it, because that is how wealth breeds. Those words stayed with Musa forever. By the age of 16, Musa was no ordinary boy. He could read and write Arabic, understand trade numbers, and recite the holy book with perfect rhythm. He began teaching the children of his village under a baobab tree. Every morning, his voice echoed through the valley, reading verses of faith and wisdom. People came not just to learn, but to listen. But destiny was testing him. Drought struck their land for 3 long years. The river dried, the crops withered, and many left Niani in search of food. Musa's family lost everything. One night, his mother fell ill, weak, hungry, but still smiling. She held his hand and told him that gold fades, but the name written in faith never dies. Those words burned into his soul. He buried her beneath an acacia tree and swore to the sky that one day he would make this land bloom again and build a world where no child sleeps hungry. Years passed. Musa, now a young man, walked from village to village, teaching, healing disputes, and guiding traders through the desert paths. His wisdom traveled faster than he did. Chiefs began to seek his counsel. Soldiers, merchants, and nobles came to him for judgment. When the great ruler Mansa Bakr II heard of him, he sent messengers to bring him to the court, asking for the man who turns words into peace. Musa entered the royal court not dressed in silk, but in a plain white robe. The king asked him who he was to speak of justice when he had no army, no gold, and no throne. Musa bowed his head and replied that a man needs none of those when he stands with truth. The hall went silent. The king smiled and said that then truth shall stand beside him. From that day, the boy born in dust began his journey into history. Mansa Abu Bakr II dreamed of the ocean and of discovering what lay beyond the endless waves of the Atlantic. One evening, as the crimson sun dipped behind the dunes, Musa stood beside the king on the palace terrace. The king told Musa that they say the world ends where the sea begins, but he does not believe it. Somewhere beyond that horizon there must be other lands, gold, knowledge, people, perhaps another world. Musa bowed and told the king that if Allah has hidden it, it is only because the time has not yet come for man to find it. The king smiled and decided that he shall find it himself, and so began the great expedition. Abu Bakr gathered 2,000 ships, packed with provisions, gold, and men, including scholars, sailors, and adventurers. He told Musa that while he sails to seek the edge of the world, Musa shall rule in his place and guard Mali as his own heart. Months turned into years. No ship returned. The people whispered that the sea had swallowed their king. In the court, nobles argued. Some demanded a new ruler. Others sought to break the empire apart. But Musa remained calm. He walked among the poor, listened to their cries, and led prayers in the Grand Mosque. His words soothed the restless. He told them not to lose hope, and that even when the sun sets, it promises to rise again. The council of elders gathered. The high imam declared that their king was lost, and the throne must not remain empty. There was one whose wisdom was deeper than gold, whose heart was pure, and whose faith was unshaken. He turned to Musa and told him that the throne of Mali awaited him. Musa's heart trembled. He looked at the faces around him, warriors, traders, and farmers, all waiting. He raised his hands and said that he was not their master, but their servant, and together they would turn the desert into gold. In that moment, the boy who once counted stars beneath the Sahara became Mansa Musa, the king of Mali. Under Musa, Mali flourished. He built roads, reopened trade routes, expanded gold and salt mines, and invited scholars and architects to teach and design. The city of Timbuktu rose like a jewel. Scholars called it the City of Light. Mali became a center of trade, knowledge, and culture. Even European travelers began to hear tales of this great empire. Yet in the quiet of his palace, Musa often gazed at the stars and wondered if he had turned his soul toward Allah enough, despite building cities and turning dust into gold. He longed for spiritual peace. And so in 1324, he made the decision that would make history. A journey to Mecca across the vast Sahara with gold and faith in equal measure. The desert was silent that morning, as if the sands themselves waited for a king to move. Camels lined up like moving mountains of wealth. 60,000 men, 12,000 slaves in brocade, 500 heralds carrying golden staffs, and 100 camels, each loaded with 136 kilograms of pure gold. Musa stood in the courtyard dressed in simple white and raised his hands to the sky. He told himself that this gold is nothing before Allah and that it should serve his people and let this journey purify their hearts. The caravan moved like a river of gold. The desert tested them with scorching days, freezing nights, and howling winds. Musa walked at the front, praying, teaching, and sharing food with the poor. When they reached Cairo, the city froze. Merchants left their shops and children climbed rooftops. The Sultan, Al-Nasir Muhammad, demanded Musa bow. He replied calmly that he bows only before Allah. Musa gave away so much gold that Cairo's economy collapsed and gold lost its value for 12 years. As the caravan approached Mecca, some whispered that he shows his gold more than his God. Musa fell to his knees in the desert, weeping, and prayed that Allah had given him wealth not to boast, but to serve, and asked for forgiveness if his gold had blinded his soul. When he reached Mecca, he walked barefoot, dressed in white, humbly praying at the Kaaba. He entered not as a king, but as a servant of Allah. When he returned to Mali, he was not the same man. He had crossed deserts, given away treasures, and purified his soul. The boy from Niani had become a saint king. Musa transformed Mali into a center of learning, faith, and culture. He built the University of Sankore in Timbuktu. Scholars studied astronomy, medicine, law, and religion. In Janneh, he built the Great Mosque, a marvel of sun-baked bricks and soaring minarets. He brought poets, architects, and scholars from Cairo and Andalusia. Musa continued to give freely to the poor. When merchants warned him of gold losing value, he smiled and thought that gold has no value if it does not lift the hearts of men, and that true wealth is measured by how many lives one touches. Even European mapmakers depicted him as a black king, seated on a golden throne, holding gold in one hand and a book in the other. They called Mali the land of gold. Years passed, and the empire eventually declined, but Musa's legacy remained. Travelers told tales of his generosity. Scholars remembered his libraries. Pilgrims recounted his humility. Historians today estimate his wealth at over $400 billion. Yet Musa's true treasure was faith, knowledge, and the ability to uplift humanity. He came from dust, left behind gold that could never melt, and a kingdom that shone brighter than the desert sun. Musa's life was more than gold and power. He showed the world that true wealth is measured by faith, wisdom, and generosity. The deserts he once crossed, the cities he built, and the knowledge he spread became a legacy that would outlast empires. Children in Mali learned under the shade of baobab trees, scholars studied in grand libraries, and travelers whispered stories of the king who turned dust into gold. His name became legend, not for the treasures he held, but for the hearts he touched. Even centuries later, people remember Mansa Musa as a man who rose from humble beginnings, faced the tests of life with patience and faith, and left behind a kingdom that shone brighter than the desert sun. His story reminds the world that greatness is not in what you take, but in what you give, and that a heart filled with knowledge, compassion, and faith is richer than the heaviest gold. Mansa Musa, the boy of dust, became the king of hearts, a timeless symbol of wisdom, humility, and enduring legacy.